Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Arunachala Ramanaya Namaskaram. Before I begin talking, I'd just like to say, to make these meetings more interactive, if anyone watching this on Zoom or on YouTube has any questions, if you're on Zoom, you can write in the Zoom chat. And if you're watching on YouTube, there's a live chat. You can write any questions there, and those questions will be relayed to me by Anuragji. So I would very much encourage any questions that anyone has, whether about the verse that I'm talking about or about any other aspect of Bhagavan's teachings, because always if there's a certain amount of questions, it makes the meeting more interactive. It's not just one person talking, because we are sharing Bhagavan's teachings. So what I was talking about back in February, I was discussing the fourth verse of Āṉma-Viddai. So just pick up from where we left off, I will first read the meaning of this verse. What Bhagavan says in this verse is, for the bonds beginning with action or karma to be untied, to rise from the devastation beginning with birth, in other words, samsara, more than whatever path, this path is what is exceedingly easy. This path he's referring to the path of self-investigation, Atma-vichara. And then he goes on to say, when one just is, resting without the least action of mind, speech, or body, are, in the heart, the light of oneself alone. There's no verb here, but the implication, particularly when we read this verse in connection with other verses in this song, when he said the light of oneself alone, he implies the light of oneself alone will shine forth. And then he says, nitanubhutiye, the eternal experience, that is the shining forth of the light of our self, and of the light of pure awareness. This is the eternal experience. That is, even now, what we actually are is pure awareness, and as pure awareness, we are always experiencing pure awareness and nothing but pure awareness. So this experience is eternal. We seem to be separated from that only because we've risen as ego. Since the light of our self shining forth is the annihilation of ego, and since all fear is only for ego, he also says, bidi iradu. That means BDA iradu. That means fear does not exist. Fear ceases to exist as soon as ego is annihilated, and we awaken to this eternal experience. Imbam bodhiye, this is the ocean of bliss alone. So what I have explained so far is I explained that we can untie ourselves from the bonds of karma and samsara only by eradicating the root of them, namely ego. And we can eradicate ego only by investigating and knowing what we actually are. And the root of both the bonds beginning with karma and the devastation beginning with birth is ego. Because so long as we rise and stand as ego, we're aware of ourselves as I am this body, and consequently we seem to be born and to die. And in this state of embodied existence, we seem to be the doer of actions and the experiencer of its fruit. How can we get rid of this ego? We need to know what we actually are. And we can know what we actually are just by being as we actually are. Because what we actually are cannot be an object of knowledge. What we actually are is Satchit, pure being awareness. So we can't know it as an object. We can only know it by being it. because what we actually are is pure awareness. And what knows pure awareness is only pure awareness. So in order to know pure awareness, we must be pure awareness. So we need to be as we actually are. And being as we actually are means not rising as ego to do any action at all. Only when we rise as ego do we begin to act by mind, speech, and body. So long as we rise as ego, we continue to act by mind, speech, and body. So in order to be without the least action of mind, speech, or body, we need to be without rising as ego. And to cease rising as ego permanently, we need to know what we actually are. And what Bhagavan implies by just being, resting without even the least action of mind, speech, or body, is not manolaya, temporary dissolution, but only manonasa, annihilation of mind. Because every day when we fall asleep, we are in sleep, we're in a state of just being without the least action of mind, speech, or body. But that's very pleasant to be in sleep, but we come out of sleep again. So any temporary state is not the solution we are looking for. We are looking for a permanent solution. And so the permanent solution is not any state of manolaya, which by manolaya is always temporary, as Bhagavan clarifies in verse 13 of Upadesha Āṇma-Viddai. Dissolution is of two kinds, meaning dissolution of mind is of two kinds, laya and nasa. What is subsided in laya will rise. If its form dies in nasa, it will not rise. That's what Bhagavan says in verse 13 of Upadesha Āṇma-Viddai. So what Bhagavan makes clear is that manolaya is not a worthwhile aim to seek. We should only seek what is permanent. That is manonasa. I also discussed about the fact that we need to cling to self-attentiveness so firmly that we do not allow ourselves to be swayed, even to the slightest extent, by any Vishaya Vasana, because only then will we dissolve in manonasa, thereby remaining forever without the least action of mind, speech, or body. So I explained up to that point back in February. So now I will take up from where we left off. We will be truly without the least action of mind, speech, or body only when the seeds of karma, namely Vishaya Vasanas, are completely eradicated along with their root, namely ego. All vasanas can be, vasanas means inclinations. Vasanas are the seeds that give rise to likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, and so on. So we can also say that the likes, dislikes, desires, hopes, fears, and so on, in their seed form are vasanas. So all vasanas can be destroyed only when their root, namely ego, is eradicated, because it is the nature of ego to have vasanas, and until all Vishaya Vasanas are destroyed, we cannot truly be said to be without action, karma, because Vishaya Vasanas are the seeds that cause us to fall in the great ocean of action, as Bhagavan implies in verse 2 of Upadesha Āṇma-Viddai. In the Sanskrit version of this verse, in Upadesha Saram, Bhagavan begins in the first line, he says, Kriti Mahodado Patana Karanam, the cause for falling in the great ocean of action. But in the Sanskrit version, because he was writing in a short meter, there wasn't space to specify what that cause is. But Bhagavan expects us to understand that the cause for all action is the vasanas. The vasanas are the seeds that prompt us to act. But what he couldn't state, though he couldn't state it explicitly in Sanskrit, he only implied it in Sanskrit, he stated it explicitly in Tamil. In Tamil, what he says is, Vinayim vilevu vilevutru. That means the fruit of action perishing. As he says in Sanskrit, palamasasvatam. That is, when we do any action, it yields a fruit. We obviously don't experience the fruit immediately. The fruit gets stored in sanchita, and from the sanchita, a selection of fruit that are stored in sanchita are chosen by God for us to experience in each lifetime. So what we experience in each lifetime is a selection of the fruit of our past actions. Once we experience the fruit of our past action, that past action thereby, that fruit thereby perishes. We can understand this with the analogy of a physical fruit. If someone gives us a mango, if we eat the mango once, we can't eat it again, but once we've eaten it, it's finished, it perished. So in the same way, once we experience the fruit of any action, that fruit thereby perishes. So the fruit of action perishing, Bhagavan begins by saying, or in Sanskrit, palamasasvatam, the fruit are impermanent. But, so what is it that causes us to fall in the ocean of action? That he makes clear in the next clause. In Tamil, he says, Vittai vinay kadal virtidam. As seed or being seed causes us to fall in the ocean of action. The seeds he's referring to here are the vasanas. In the Malayalam version of Upadeshasaram, because Bhagavan wrote this originally in Tamil and later he translated it into Telugu, Sanskrit, and Malayalam. So it's available Bhagavan has written it in 4 different languages. But in Malayalam, he happened to use a longer meter. So there are things he could clarify in the Malayalam version, which are just implied in other versions. So what does the word seed imply? As we should understand, if we know anything about Vedanta philosophy, seeds always, in this context, always refer to vasanas. But in the Malayalam version, he made this explicit. He said, vasanakara vittai. That means as seeds in the form of vasanas. So the seeds he's referring to are vasanas. So vittai vinay kadal vetidam, as seed or being seed, it causes to fall in the ocean of action. Vidu taral ille, that literally means not giving liberation. It is not giving liberation. In Tamil, he says it doesn't give liberation. That when he says it doesn't give liberation, that implies karma doesn't give liberation. In the Sanskrit version, he's even more emphatic in what he says. He doesn't just say that it doesn't give liberation. He says gati nirodhakam, it obstructs liberation. So long as we're doing action, we can't attain liberation. That is, action is the obstacle. But what causes us to do action? It is the vasanas, the seeds. So if we want to be without the least action of mind, speech, and body, as he says in this verse, we need to eradicate these seeds. So as I say, what he refers to here as vittu, seed, are vishaya vasanas. And how they cause us to fall in the ocean of action is that whenever we allow ourselves to be swayed by any vishaya vasana, our attention is thereby directed away from ourselves towards something else. And that movement of our attention away from ourselves is the beginning of all mental activities, which are what prompt us to act by speech and body. So it's under the sway of our vishaya vasana that our attention begins to move away from ourselves. That movement of our attention away from ourselves towards something else is mental activity. So all mental activity is a movement of our attention away from, or our mind away from ourselves towards other things. So these vasanas are the cause of all chitta-vrittis. And the chitta-vrittis, or mental activities, are what prompt us to act by mind, by speech, and by body. So the vasanas are the seeds that give rise to all actions. And since vasanas are therefore the seeds under whose sway we act by mind, speech, and body, they are also called karma vasanas, inclinations to do actions. That is, since we do actions in order to experience Vishayas, Vishayas means objects or phenomena, of one kind or another, our inclinations to experience Vishayas are what makes us inclined to do actions. So the Vishaya vasanas manifest as karma vasanas. So truly speaking, Vishaya vasanas and karma vasanas are one and the same thing, because it's our inclination to experience the Vishayas that makes us inclined to do actions in order to experience those Vishayas. Actions are the means by which we seek to experience Vishayas. So the inclinations to seek happiness in those Vishayas is what causes us, it gives us the inclination to act. If a wild fire burns down all the trees in a forest, it will have destroyed the forest only if it has destroyed not only all the trees, but also all the seeds of those trees. Because if the seeds survive the fire, the forest will regrow from them. This is what we see in nature when there are wild forest fires. Though the trees may be destroyed, the seeds remain. And in fact, in forests where there's a particularly strong tendency for wildfires to break out, the seeds of those trees are specially adapted to survive the fire. In fact, there are some trees whose seeds will only come out of the shell, will only sprout after they've been subjected to fire. So that is a very nice analogy for this. So long as the seeds remain, in this case, we're not talking about forest fires, we're talking about action. The seeds that give rise to action, even if we stop acting, so long as the seeds remain, we are liable to again begin acting, because all action of mind, speech, and body is done under the sway of Vishaya vasanas. So likewise, we can put a permanent end to all karma by destroying all Vishaya vasanas, only by destroying all Vishaya vasanas, because so long as the Vishaya vasanas survive, they will continue to immerse us in the great ocean of action. Until all Vishaya, so we particularly those of us who are familiar with the Sanskrit version of Upadeshasaram, whenever we hear these words, Kriti Mahodado Patanakaranam, these are very beautiful words, we need to remember that the cause Bhagavan is talking about there is these vasanas. So our aim is to destroy the vasanas. Until all Vishaya vasanas are completely erased, the only respite we can have from doing karma is in sleep and other states of manolaya. But such respite is not real freedom from action, because sooner or later we will rise from manolaya along with all our Vishaya vasanas, under whose sway we will continue doing karma. So sleep is very pleasant so long as it lasts. We are free of all karma, and we are free of both of doing karma and experiencing the fruit of karma while we are asleep. But sooner or later we wake up and again we come under the sway of vasanas. Therefore, we will be truly solmana tanuvin karmadi siridindri. These are the words that Bhagavan uses in this verse. And these words mean without the least action of mind, speech, or body. So we will be truly without the least action of mind, speech, or body only when all the seeds of karma, namely Vishaya vasanas, are completely eradicated along with their root, namely ego. In this context, Bhagavan often referred to Yoga Vashista in Book 5, Chapter 56, verses 13 and 14. There are two verses that are very relevant to this. So once when Bhagavan was referring to these verses, Murugan recorded the meaning of them as explained by Bhagavan in verses 1133 and 1134 of Guru Vasika Kovai. And when Bhagavan saw those verses, he then condensed them into a single verse, which is now verse 30 in Uludunaptu Anabandam. What Bhagavan says in this verse is, like one who hears a story, the mind being far away, the mind in which vasanas have been erased is actually not doing, even though doing. The mind that those vasanas soak is actually doing, even though not doing. Even though movement has ceased here in dream, climbing a hill, one falls in a pit. That's very, very, it's expressed in a very compact manner, because as I say, what is in 2 verses in Yoga Vashista and also 2 verses in Guru Vaska Kuvai, Bhagavan has packed it into 1 verse here in Uludunapta Anabandam. So if we expand the meaning of this a little, just to clarify the meaning, what this verse implies is, like one who seemingly hears a story, even though their mind is actually going far away and therefore not hearing the story at all, the mind in which all vasanas have been erased is not actually doing any action at all, even though in the view of others, it seems to be doing any number of actions. So for those who were living with Bhagavan, Bhagavan seemed to be doing so many actions. He was he walked around the hill with devotees. He cut vegetables and assisted with the cooking in the kitchen. He did all sorts of actions by body, also by when people came asked questions, he did actions by speech. He answered some of their questions. He also did. He also wrote verses and so on. So these all indicate actions of mind, speech, and body, because obviously we can't answer a question or do other actions without actions of mind. So in our view, it seems to us that Bhagavan is doing so many things. He's thinking, he's answering questions, he's cutting the vegetables, supervising the cooking, and all these things. So Bhagavan seems to be doing actions in our view, but actually Bhagavan is not doing any action at all. Because just like one who is seemingly listening to a story, but their mind has gone far away, thinking about other things, Bhagavan was not actually doing any actions, though he seemed to be acting. So that's the first half of the verse. The second half of the verse, what the second half implies is, on the other hand, the mind that those soak, those implies the vasanas. So that is the mind that is soaked with vasanas is actually doing action, even though it is seemingly not doing any action. Just as even though movement has ceased here, that is, even though in the waking world, a person seems to be lying without movement in a bed, they're in their experience, in a dream, they're climbing a hill and falling in a pit. So a person can seem to be sitting all day in meditation, not doing any action at all. But so long as the vasanas are there, they are not free of action. Whereas another person, like Bhagavan, may seem to be doing so many actions, but because ego has been destroyed, all the vasanas have been destroyed with it, Bhagavan has no connection with the actions that in our view, he seems to be doing. That is, he has no connection. That means in his experience, he's not doing any action. As he explains I think in the next verse, he gives the analogy, yes, in verse 31 of Uludunaptu, he gives the analogy of a person sleeping in a cart. When a person is sleeping in the cart, they're not aware whether the cart is moving or standing, or whether the cart is remaining alone, unyoked from the bulls. The person sleeping in the cart has no awareness of that. Likewise, to the knower of reality, who is asleep within the fleshy body, which is like a cart, their activity, nishta, and sleep are just like that. They're not aware of it at all. So Bhagavan wasn't. What Bhagavan actually is pure awareness. So as pure awareness, he knows nothing other than pure awareness. But in our view, we see Bhagavan as a body, and through that body, what is shining through that body is our own real nature. Our own real nature is infinite clarity of awareness and infinite love. So we see shining through the body of Bhagavan, shining through every action of his, we see so much clarity and so much love. But that's in our view, because we see Bhagavan as the body. Bhagavan doesn't see himself as the body. So the main point here is, but to be truly free from action, as Bhagavan emphasized in this verse 30, to be truly free from action, we need to be free from vasanas. So long as vasanas remain, even though we're seeming to be without action, we are still acting. That's the significance of that verse in this context. So what Bhagavan is talking about in this verse of Āṉma-Viddai is just being without the least action of mind, speech, or body. So we have to understand, so long as there is Vishaya vasanas, we cannot be without the least action of mind, speech, or body. So we need to get rid of the vasanas, and we cannot be completely free of vasanas until the root of vasanas, namely ego, is destroyed. Why is ego the root of vasanas? Whose vasanas are they? Who is it who is inclined to act in this way and that way, to enjoy this Vishaya or that Vishaya? It is only ourself as ego. So without ego, there can be no Vishaya vasanas. And so long as there's Vishaya vasanas, so long as there's ego, there will be Vishaya vasanas to a greater or lesser extent. So as ego, all we can do is reduce the strength of our Vishaya vasanas. We cannot free ourselves entirely from Vishaya vasanas without surrendering ourselves completely. That is, without the annihilation of ego, we cannot be free of Vishaya vasanas completely. So by the practice of self-investigation, we are gradually weaning our mind off its inclination to go outwards. In other words, we're weaning our mind off its Vishaya vasanas. So by self-investigation, we are weakening the Vishaya vasanas and strengthening the Sat vasana, the inclination just to be as we actually are. And it's that what is called Sat vasana is what is also called Swatma Bhakti, the love for our own self, in other words, for our own being. So that is the key to knowing what we actually are. So by self-investigation, we are gradually weakening the Vishaya vasanas and strengthening the Sat vasana until it reaches a point that the Sat vasana becomes stronger than the Vishaya vasanas. Only when the Sat vasana becomes stronger than the Vishaya vasanas will we finally have sufficient love, sufficient bhakti to surrender ourselves completely. So, but only when that is Atma-vichara, as Bhagavan made clear, this is the pinnacle of the path of bhakti. That is the final practice on the path of bhakti is Atma-vichara, because it is only by Atma-vichara that we can surrender ourselves completely. Why is this? Because the nature of ego is to rise, stand, and flourish by attending to things other than itself, but to subside and dissolve back into its source by attending to itself. So in order to surrender ourselves completely, we need to attend to ourselves. So this practice of Atma-vichara, this is the ultimate practice in the path of bhakti. So by this practice, our bhakti, our love to be as we actually are, it steadily increased until finally that love to be as we actually are becomes stronger than all these Vishaya vasanas. So we're finally willing to surrender ourselves completely. That is when the path of bhakti and jnana reach their ultimate fruition in the dissolution of ego. That is, we are finally willing to surrender ourselves completely. So this is what we are aiming for when we are trying to investigate ourselves. We are trying to hold on to our being, and by holding on, we're trying to hold on to our being in order to know what we actually are. But so long as the Vishaya vasanas are still strong, we are not yet willing to hold on to our being firmly enough. So our attention keeps on coming outwards. So we need to persevere in this practice until our love to be as we actually are, in other words, our sattvasana, becomes stronger than any of than all the Vishaya vasanas put together. Then only will we be willing to surrender ourselves completely. Coming back to this subject of being without action, God makes our mind, speech, and body do whatever actions they need to do in order for us to experience our prarabdha. But while experiencing our prarabdha, we generally do actions by mind, speech, and body under the sway of our vasanas, as Bhagavan implies in the note he wrote for his mother in December 1898. What he said in this note is, Avarava prarabdha prakaram adakanavan angangirindu artavipan. That literally means, in accordance with their prarabdha, he who is for that, being there, will cause to dance. That's the literal meaning. What that implies is, in accordance with the destiny or prarabdha of each individual, he who is for that, namely God or Guru, who ordains their destiny, being in the heart of each of them, will make them act. That is, when he says angangirantu, being there, it implies being in each place. That's the more superficial implication. I mean, that's also true, but it also implies being in the heart of each one of us. So being in our heart, he drives us to do whatever actions are necessary in order for us to experience our prarabdha. So some of the actions we do by mind, speech, and body are actions we are made to do by Bhagavan in order for us to experience our prarabdha. But many of the actions we do are actions that we do under the sway of our vasanas. In fact, the vast majority of actions we do under the sway of our vasanas. Even those actions we are made to do in accordance with our prarabdha, in other words, the action we are made to do by Bhagavan in accordance with our prarabdha, even those actions, often they are simultaneously motivated by our vasanas. That is, it may be our prarabdha to enjoy something, to enjoy a very tasty meal, for example. In order to enjoy that tasty meal, certain actions are necessary on our part. We may need to go to the shop, buy the food, and come and cook it. Or if a friend has invited us, we have to go to their house and we have to sit down and we have to put the food in our mouth. So these actions, we cannot avoid doing these actions because it's our destiny to experience that nice, tasty meal. So we're made to act in accordance with that. But we also want to enjoy that tasty meal. So not only are those actions being driven by God in accordance with our prarabdha, they're also being driven by our vasanas. So we can take for granted, but the vast majority of our actions, whether or not they're actions we're made to do by God in accordance with our prarabdha, the vast majority of the actions we're doing under the sway of our vasanas. That is what Bhagavan refers to indirectly in the next several sentences. What he says in the second sentence is, Endrum naduvadadu, envichikanum naduvadu. That means what is never to happen will not happen, however much effort we make, however much we try. So the very important word here is envichikanum, however much we try, however much effort we make. What does this imply? This implies that though Bhagavan made it clear, what is never to happen will not happen. So we cannot experience anything that is not destined to happen. But though we cannot experience anything that is not destined to happen, that doesn't prevent us wanting to experience it. We all want to experience things that we're never going to experience because they're just not meant to happen. But we still have desire to experience it, and we still try to experience those things. Supposing it's our destiny to live in poverty all our life, that the fact that we are destined to be always poor doesn't stop us wanting to be rich. It doesn't stop us trying to be rich, but it does stop us being rich. So we can want to be rich as much as we want, and we can try to be rich as much as we want, but we cannot be rich unless that happens to be our destiny. And the next sentence, he said the flip side of that. That is, in this he said, what is never to happen will not happen, in spite of any amount of effort. In the next sentence, he says, what is to happen, nadapadu entade seinum niladu. What is to happen will not stop in spite of any amount of obstacle that is made. That is, if we are destined to experience something, we are free to want to not experience it, and we are free to try to avoid experiencing it. So unpleasant things happen to all of us in life. We all undergo unpleasant experiences of one kind or another, and we would all prefer not to have to undergo those experiences. So we want to avoid such experiences. We try as far as possible to avoid such experiences. But if they're destined to happen, we cannot avoid them. They're going to happen. So though we have the freedom to want to experience anything or want to avoid experiencing anything. We have the freedom to try to experience anything or to try to avoid experiencing anything. But we have no freedom to experience what is not destined to happen or to avoid experiencing what is destined to happen. Iduvei tinnam, this is certain. Ahalin monamai irake nandru. Therefore, being silent is good. That is what Bhagavan wrote in that note when his mother came, the first time his mother came to meet him after he had left Madurai. That is, for some time they had no idea where he was. Then some visitor from Madurai who came to Tiruvannamalai, he heard about this young Swami who was sitting on the hill. In those days, people believed Bhagavan had a vow of silence. Of course, he didn't have a vow of silence. He just didn't. He had no inclination to speak, so he didn't speak. So this person went to see Bhagavan, and when he saw him, he said, "Oh, this is Venkataraman, this young boy." He knew the family, so he recognized Bhagavan. So he then, when he returned to Madurai, he informed his Bhagavan's mother and relatives that the Bhagavan is there. He's now living as a Swami in Tiruvannamalai, and people have great respect for him. But he seems to be having a strict vow of silence. He's not talking to anyone. That's what was reported. So naturally, his mother wanted to come and see him, but because she was widowed and her children were all studying, she had no means to come to Bhagavan immediately. But her son, her eldest son, Bhagavan's elder brother, soon after that got a job. And once he got a job, he was able to save up money, and he brought his mother to Bhagavan in December 1898. And seeing Bhagavan's condition, as a mother, naturally, she was very sad to see what appeared to her to be very harsh austerities Bhagavan was doing. Of course, he wasn't doing any austerities. He was just indifferent to the body. But that's not how it appeared in the eyes of a mother. I mean, naturally, a mother, if a mother sees her son in a physical condition, but appears to her to be suffering, she will naturally feel it. So she was begging Bhagavan to come back with her to Madurai. Bhagavan was sitting there without responding anything. some other people who were present there, they felt very sorry to see Bhagavan's mother weeping and begging him to come back, and Bhagavan not responding in any way, not seeming to be indifferent to his mother's pleas. So someone gave Bhagavan a paper and pencil and said, Swami, even if you don't want to reply by speech, at least write some reply to console your mother. And so Bhagavan wrote this note. So what he was telling his mother is what is meant. That is, what is meant to happen is going to happen. What is not meant to happen is not going to happen. Nothing we can want to do or try to do is going to change that. And whatever be our destiny, we'll be made to act in accordance with that destiny. So it was a very appropriate reply to his mother, but it's also got a very, very deep teaching. And this is the first, as far as we know, this is the first teaching that Bhagavan ever gave in words. So this is a very, very important teaching. This note he wrote for his mother is extremely significant. So anyway, to continue, so long as we rise and stand as ego, we cannot avoid experiencing whatever we are destined to experience. And we cannot experience anything that we are not destined to experience. But as Bhagavan implies in the second and third sentences of this note, we are free to want to avoid experiencing what we are not destined to experience, and to we're free. We are free to want to avoid experiencing what we are. We're free to avoid experiencing what we are destined to experience, and we're also free to want to experience what we are not destined to experience, and we are also free to try to do so. In other words, we have freedom of will and we have freedom of action, but we have no freedom as far as the experience is concerned, because what we are to experience, that is predetermined according to Prarabdha. Prarabdha has predetermined what we are to experience. It is under the sway of our Vishaya vasanas, but we want to experience certain things and to avoid experiencing certain other things, and that we do actions accordingly. And whatever actions we do under the sway of our Vishaya vasanas are agamya, whether or not they happen to be in accordance with Prarabdha. That is, some of the actions we do under the sway of our Vishaya vasanas happen to be in accordance with our Prarabdha. That is, we may want to experience something, and we make effort for it, and then we experience it. We think, oh, by my effort, I'm experiencing this. But actually, we are experiencing it because it's our destiny, not because of any effort we've made in this life, and not because of any will we may have now. Whatever is done by a person in whom ego has been eradicated, along with all its Vishaya vasanas, are actions that that person is made to do by God. So the doer of those actions is only God. And hence in verse 30 of Uludunaptu Anubandham, Bhagavan says, Vadanegal te manam sedum seyade. That means the mind in which vasanas have been erased is not doing, even though doing. However, until ego has been eradicated, it is the doer of whatever actions it does through mind, speech, or body under the sway of its Vishaya vasanas. And its sense of doership, kartrutva buddhi, is not limited to the actions it does. It is not limited only to the actions it does, because it includes whatever it does not do, as he implies when he says, Avaigal toi manum sedu indriyanam sedade. That means the mind in which they, namely vasanas, soak, is actually doing, even though not doing. That is, so long as we rise and stand as ego, we consequently experience the mind, speech, and body as ourself. So when any or all of these three instruments are active, our experience is, I am doing these actions. And when they are not doing any actions, our experience is, I am doing nothing. For example, if we are sitting with our eyes closed, trying to do nothing by mind, speech, or body, our experience will be, I am sitting without thinking or saying anything, because we still identify ourselves as the body that is sitting and the mind and speech that are seemingly not doing anything. So even to think I am not doing anything now, that itself is a doership, because we're still identifying with the body and mind. Because the body and mind are not doing anything, we say, I am doing nothing. So there's still the doership there. Hence our doership persists, whether we are doing anything or nothing. And so long as it persists, we are doing even when we are doing nothing. That's what Bhagavan is saying in this verse. So it's a very nice, subtle point he's teaching us here. Therefore, the state in which we are truly just being without the least action of mind, speech, or body is only the state in which we remain without ever rising as ego, even to the slightest extent. So this alone is the state that he describes as, in this verse of Āṉma-Viddai, as solmanada tanuvin kamadi siridindri summa amandu irrital. That is just being, resting without the least action of mind, speech, or body, in the second sentence of this fourth verse that we're discussing now. And it's also what he describes as monomai irike, silently being or being silent, in the final sentence of the note he wrote for his mother. Ahalin monomai irike nandru, therefore silently being is good. What he means by silently being is not, we can silently be only by ceasing to rise as ego, and thereby ceasing to engage in, to identify ourselves with whatever action the body, speech, or mind may happen to be doing. So Bhagavan was always silently being, even when he seemed to be doing actions, because those actions never touched him, because he had no sense of doership. Our rising as ego is itself an action. It is the first action and the root of all other actions. Our standing, remaining, or enduring as ego is likewise an action, because as Bhagavan points out in verse 25 of Uludunapadu, we cannot rise or stand as ego without grasping form, which means attending to and experiencing things other than ourselves. Knowing other things is therefore the very nature of ego. And so long as we have risen and are standing as ego, we cannot remain for a moment without doing action. Even knowing something other than ourselves is itself an action. It's a mental activity. That is, attending to, experiencing, or knowing anything other than ourselves is an action, because it is a departure from our natural state of just being as we actually are, in which we know nothing other than ourselves. So since we cannot remain as ego without constantly knowing things other than ourselves, as ego we can never be without any action. Therefore, in order to just be without the least action of mind, speech, or body, we must cease knowing anything other than ourselves. And in order to cease knowing anything other than ourselves, we must cease rising and standing as ego. In order to achieve this state, in which we never rise as ego, even to the slightest extent, and thereby remain without the least action of mind, speech, or body, all we need to do is to persevere in trying to be so keenly and steadily self-attentive that we thereby cease to be aware of anything else whatsoever. To whatever extent we are self-attentive, to that extent, ego subsides, and we thereby come close to just being without the least action of mind, speech, or body. And our self-attentiveness will increase in keenness, depth, and clarity the more we persevere in this simple practice. So we just need to continue persevering until eventually ego merges forever in its source and substance, namely pure being awareness, Satchit, which is our fundamental awareness of our own existence, I am. Have any questions come up yet?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There are 3 questions. Would you want to take them right away?
Yes.
Excellent. So the first question is, and I quote, "Can we say vasanas as habit of the mind?" Unquote.
Vasanas are seeds that give rise to habits. We can't. Habits are fairly gross things. We develop habits because we have certain likes and dislikes, and we develop certain patterns of behavior. So those patterns of behavior are called habits. But vasanas are something much more subtle than that. Vasanas are the inclinations that give rise to habits. Why do we behave in an habitual manner? Because we have an inclination to behave in that habitual manner. So the inclination to behave in a habitual manner, or to behave to behave in accordance with certain habits, those inclinations are the vasanas. So the vasanas are the seeds that give rise to the likes, the dislikes, the desires, the attachments, the hopes, the fears, the preferences, the habits. All these are sprouted forms of the vasanas. So all our external activities, all our behavior is a manifestation of the subtle vasanas that are present in our heart. But one important thing to understand about vasanas are inclinations. We are never bound by our inclinations. So we may have a strong inclination to do something or to behave in a certain way, but supposing we have the discrimination to understand that certain ways of behaving are not appropriate. They may be causing harm to others, or for one reason or other, they may not be appropriate. We have a freedom either to follow our inclinations and behave in such a manner, in spite of whatever harm we may be doing to others, or we have the freedom to not to be swayed by those particular vasanas. Because as Bhagavan says, there are countless vasanas. In the beginning of the 10th paragraph of Nana, Bhagavan says, Tondru totu varukindra vishaya vasanaigal alavatruvanai kadal alaikal pol tondrinum. That means, though vishaya vasanas, which come from time immemorial, from the very beginning of time, these vasanas have been there. We can't trace back the beginning of these vasanas. That is, ever since he rose as ego, we've had vasanas. And these vasanas, they rise in countless numbers like ocean waves. So all our mental activity is nothing but the play of vishaya vasanas. And our vasanas are often pulling us in opposite directions. We may be inclined to do a certain action, but we may also have an opposite inclination. Supposing we have a certain habit. Supposing, for example, just to take because this is a very addictive behavior, so it illustrates the point very well. Supposing we have a habit of smoking. Why do we smoke? Because we've got a strong inclination to smoke. But we may also be aware that smoking is bad for our health. And we naturally, because we are attached to this body, we naturally have a strong inclination to maintain the health of this body. Because so long as we live in this body, we want to be healthy. Because it's rather uncomfortable being sick. So we all prefer to be healthy. So we all have a natural inclination to maintain the health of this body. So we've got two opposite inclinations. We've got one inclination, but a very strong inclination to smoke, because we've been smoking for so many years. I'm not saying we have, but I'm just citing this as an example. We may have such a strong inclination to smoke, but we've also come to know, when we started smoking, maybe as a teenager, we didn't know this, but now we know, or perhaps we knew it, but we ignored it. Now we know smoking is very harmful. And so many people have died of cancer because of smoking, and died of other diseases because of smoking. So it's now very well known that smoking is harmful. So we may now, though we have this strong inclination to smoke, we may wish to give up smoking. Many people who smoke, they would prefer not to smoke. They wish they didn't have this habit, but it's a very strong habit. So they try to give it up. But some people succeed, some people fail. It depends how strong the vasanas are. But if we are very concerned about our health, maybe we've had some health crisis and the doctors have told us, if you continue smoking, you're finished. You're not going to live very long. So we really have a very strong desire to give up smoking. So every time the inclination to smoke rises, the opposite inclination to avoid smoking will also arise. This is where our freedom of will lies, because we are free to choose which vasana we want to be swayed by. If we are so-called weak will, that is, we don't have sufficient love to avoid smoking, we will succumb to the vasana to smoke, and we'll continue smoking. And the more but another important point to understand about the nature of vasanas are our own likes and dislikes. So why are we swayed by vasanas? Because we like to be swayed by them. So the vasanas have no strength of their own. Whatever strength any vasana seems to have is strength that we endow the vasanas with strength. So if we have a strong inclination to do some harmful thing like smoking, that vasana is strong because we have endowed it with strength. How have we endowed it with strength? Because we've been, for so many years, ever since we were a teenager or whenever we started smoking, we've been allowing ourselves to be swayed by that inclination. Because we've allowed ourselves to be swayed by it repeatedly, the more we allow ourselves to be swayed by any particular vasana, the stronger that vasana becomes. So when we after 20, 30 years of smoking, we may finally come to the realization, yes, smoking is not good for my health. So we now have a strong inclination not to smoke. If we allow ourselves to be swayed, continue to be swayed by that inclination to smoke, that inclination will continue getting stronger. But if every time that inclination rises, we allow ourselves to be swayed by the contrary inclination, the inclination to avoid smoking, slowly that inclination to avoid smoking will become stronger, and the inclination to smoke will become weaker. So there are many people who smoked for many years, maybe for many decades. Once they finally succeed in giving up smoking, then that is, they've given it up because they strengthen that inclination not to smoke. Then people will say, I can't imagine now how I could have such a disgusting habit, how I was smoking, taking this filthy smoke, tar-filled smoke into my lungs, how I could ever have had such a liking, I can't now imagine. Why? Because they, instead of allowing themselves to be swayed by that inclination, that vasana to smoke, they've allowed themselves to be swayed by the contrary inclination. So that contrary inclination has become very strong, and that previous inclination to smoke, that inclination was previously so strong, has lost its strength because that person hasn't allowed themselves to be swayed by that. So but vasanas seem to rule us, but actually if we can't make any excuse for our actions. We can't say, oh, I smoke because my vasanas are too strong, or I can't avoid going to rob the bank because I've got a very strong vasana to go and rob the bank. We can't make excuses. If you're taken to court for robbing the bank and you say, oh, I couldn't help it, my vasanas were too strong, that's going to be no excuse. So why? Because even however strong an inclination may be, we have the freedom to either allow ourselves to be swayed by it or not allow ourselves to be swayed by it. If we allow ourselves to be swayed by it and to act accordingly, we are responsible for the consequences of that. So this is why we are responsible for our actions. The actions we do under the sway of our vasanas are what are called agamya. The agamya, though we talk of three karmas, agamya, sanchita, and prarabdha, actually, strictly speaking, there's one action, that is agamya. Because the sanchita and prarabdha, though they are called two of the three karmas, they're actually karma pala, not karma. So it's only in a it's conventionally they're referred to as karma, though they're actually karma palas. So the actions we do under the sway of our vasanas, those are the agamya, and the agamya of the actions that bear fruit, and that fruit gets stored in sanchita, and it remains in sanchita until God, in some future lifetime, may or may not select that particular fruit for us to experience. So that's why Bhagavan says, but it's the vasanas that cause us to fall in the great ocean of action. So that kriti mahodado patana karanam, that is the vasanas. But the vasanas, though they cause us to fall in that great ocean of action, they only cause us to fall in that great ocean of action because we allow ourselves to be swayed by them. We are always free to avoid being swayed by our vasanas. And that is what this spiritual path is all about. That's what self-investigation and self-surrender is about. Instead of allowing ourselves to be swayed by the vasanas, we try to hold on to our own being. In other words, we allow ourselves to be swayed by grace in the form of satvasana. In fact, the satvasana, the inclination just to be as we actually are, which is the love that enables us to investigate ourselves and surrender ourselves, that is the bhakti. From where does that come? That comes only by grace. Why? Because the very nature of ego is to go outwards. So if we haven't, so the natural inclination of ego is to go outwards. So it's the nature of ego to have Vishaya vasanas. If we, instead of that, we begin to develop an inclination to go inwards, that inclination cannot come from ego because it's contrary to the very nature of ego. That inclination can come only from Atma-swarupa, our own true nature, which is Bhagavan. Bhagavan is always in our heart as our own being. So Atma-swarupa is both God and Guru. And the grace of God and Guru, Bhagavan often used to say, grace is not something that comes from outside. It's not going to be something that descends on you from heaven. Grace is ever in your own heart as your own being. So when we are turning our attention within and trying to hold on to our being, we are surrendering ourselves to grace. We are allowing ourselves to be pulled inwards by that power of grace, by that love to be as we actually are. So it's all a matter of grace. That's why Bhagavan often used to say this spiritual, in this path, grace is the beginning, the middle, and the end. That is, grace is what draws us to this spiritual path. Why are we sitting here now talking about Bhagavan's teachings? Why do we have this interest to talk in this about this subject? It is only because of grace has drawn us towards this. So it is grace that draws us towards this spiritual path. It's grace that motivates us to follow this spiritual path. And eventually it is grace that will swallow us. So it's all a matter of grace. So those people who think the path of jnana is all about jnana, the path of bhakti is about bhakti, these are completely separate. Bhagavan has shown that this is a complete misunderstanding. Bhakti and jnana are never separate. They are one and the same. But love, we can never know what we actually are without love to know what we actually are. Because in order to know what we actually are, we have to give up knowing all other things, give up experiencing anything else. So it requires all-consuming love. So the bhakti and jnana are one and the same. So Bhagavan made it clear, grace is absolutely essential in this path. Without grace, we wouldn't have even the slightest inclination to come to the spiritual path. So we always need to be grateful to Bhagavan that by his grace, we have this interest, this liking to follow this path.
Thank you, sir. I'll first cover the YouTube questions. The first is from Soul Musica. That's the name appearing on the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Quote, Michael James, attending to the rabbit hole is the best.
Yes.
Ignoring the rabbit is not enough. And that war, fair of grace end with all-consuming love for Sat Vasana. Unquote.
Yes.
I'm assuming there might be a word or two missing.
This is an analogy I sometimes use. That
Sure.
is, rabbits come out to play or whatever. So say a baby rabbit, it comes out of its hole to play. So long as it thinks no one is watching it, it will happily play about. But as soon as it becomes aware that someone is watching it, that's a danger signal. So it retreats, goes closer back to its hole, because it may be a fox or a wolf watching it, waiting to catch it. So it goes back to its hole. The more it's being watched, the more it retreats to the hole. And eventually it will go back into the hole. So ego is like this. So long as we are attending to other things, ego will be dancing around doing all its mischief. But if we begin to attend to ego, that if we attend to ourselves, ego begins to retreat. It begins to go back to its source, go back to its rabbit hole. And the more we watch it, the closer it returns to its rabbit hole. And if we watch it closely enough, it goes back into its rabbit hole. This is what Bhagavan talked about tracing ego, or the thought called I, back to its source. How do we trace it back to its source? Simply by attending to it. Because the more we attend to it, the more it will retreat back into its source. So, if we attend to it, it'll take us back to the source. We need to keep a careful watch on that source. If we look the other way, the rabbit will go, thinking it's not being watched, it'll come out again. So we need to be ever self-attentive. That's the significance of that. But in order to be ever self-attentive requires great love. That love is what is called satvasana, the inclination to attend to our being and thereby to be as we actually are. That love comes only by grace. This is another thing I meant to include this in my answer to the previous question, but I forgot about it. That is, this Soul Musica has referred to a verse of Aksharamrai in which Bhagavan says, Hokum varavumil poduveli nilaro pora tanka taranachala. That means, show me the warfare of grace that is fought in the common or open space that is devoid of coming and going. That warfare of grace, as Bhagavan made clear, that is the battle between, that warfare of grace manifests in our heart as a battle between our satvasana and all our vishaya vasanas. Bhagavan often used to say, in fact, he's recorded in Guru Vachaka, Bhagavan said, the significance of, in so many Puranas, we read in various forms, we read stories about the devas Asura Yuddha. That is the battle between the Devas and the Asuras. Bhagavan said the significance of all these stories is this is the battle that's going on in the heart of every true devotee between the Satvasana and the Vishaya Vasanas. The Satvasana is grace. That is bhakti. And the Vishaya Vasanas is all the inclinations to go outwards. This is the warfare of grace that Bhagavan prays to Āṇma-Vichara to show him. Because we all have to undergo this warfare. Because so long as we've got Vishaya Vasanas, it requires, we need to fight this battle in order to by clinging more and more to self-attentiveness, we are thereby weakening the Vishaya Vasana and strengthening the Sat Vasana. So we all have to undergo this process. So Bhagavan says, show me this warfare of grace. When he says, show me the warfare, it also implies not only show me the battle going on, show me the successful conclusion of this battle. So this battle will certainly, this battle has to, it has to end in victory for grace. Grace can never be defeated. But how long it takes for grace to win this battle depends on how much we cooperate with grace. So the more we yield ourselves to grace by clinging to self-attentiveness, the quicker this battle will be over, because the quicker the Vishaya Vasanas will lose their strength and the Sat Vasana will increase in strength. And Bhagavan also says in that verse, this battle takes place in the poduveli, in the common space, in the open space, we can take it, in which there's pokum varavum, ill. That means devoid of going and coming. Going and coming is the nature of ego. Ego goes and comes. And so long as we go and come as ego, so long as we go back into sleep every night, and we come again as ego in the morning. So this is the going and coming. And when we go and come, everything else goes and comes along with us. When we rise as ego, everything rises. When we subside, everything subsides. As Bhagavan says in verse 26 of Ullugunaptu, Ahande undayin anatum undarum. If ego rises, everything rises. Ahande indrail indru anatum. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. So every night in sleep, we as ego subside and everything subsides along with us. In the morning or in sleep, dream, we rise and everything rises with us. So this going and coming is the nature of ego. But when we are shown this battle, it's taking us beyond this going and coming to that space of pure awareness in which there is never any going and coming, in which ego never rose in the first place.
The second question on YouTube from Mr. Sushil Motwani, and I quote, Namo Ramanaya, dear Michael sir, the example of smoke or not to smoke sounds contrary to everything is predestined. Kindly explain. Unquote.
Yes, everything is predestined, but that doesn't mean that if it's our destiny to smoke and to die of cancer, it's going to happen anyway. We can't avoid that. But we still have the freedom to use our viveka, our discrimination, to understand smoking is bad for us. So it may be our destiny to die of cancer, but we can at least try to give up this bad habit while we can. So that is what Bhagavan made clear, is what is destined to happen is going to happen. But we have freedom of will and action. These are not contradictory, because the destiny, the prarabdha, determines what is to happen, what we are to experience, what is to happen to us, let's say. The freedom of will and action determines what we want to experience or want to avoid experience, and what we try to experience or try to avoid experiencing. So it may be our destiny to die of smoking, but that doesn't mean that we are bound to continue smoking forever. There are some people who give up smoking, but because of the damage done already by the years of smoking, they still die of cancer. There are many people die of lung cancer, not because they smoke, but because of what is called passive smoking. Say if a married couple, for example, I mean, my own parents, for example, my father was a heavy smoker. He died of cancer at a relatively young age. He was actually younger than I am now. He was just before his 67th birthday. He died of lung cancer because of his smoking. My mother was never a smoker, but more than 30 years after my father passed away, my mother also passed away of cancer. And we don't know where the cancer started, but when they found the cancer, she had she had tumors in the lung, in the neck, and in the brain. So whether that could well have been caused by those years of passive smoking, because she lived with someone who was a heavy smoker, she eventually, I mean, she lived up to the age of 90, but still in the end it caught up with her. So if it's our destiny to, I mean, however we're destined to die, we're going to die. If we're destined to live to old age, we'll live to old age. If we're destined to die young, we'll die young. This is all predetermined. But though we don't have any freedom to change that, we do have freedom to change our likes and dislikes and to change what we try to do. So it may be our destiny. There are some people who smoke till old age, and they never die of cancer. So it doesn't mean that if you smoke, you will definitely die of cancer. But the chances of dying of cancer are far greater if you smoke. So the destiny determines what is to happen. The freedom of will determines what we want to happen or want not to happen. And the freedom of action determines what we try to make happen or try to avoid happening. So there's no contradiction between these things. Another thing to understand about prarabdha is not just random. Prarabdha is allotted by Bhagavan. So Bhagavan allots such a prarabdha that is suited to our nature. Some people say, oh, supposing it's your destiny to be a gangster, a mafia boss or something. If it's your destiny, you can't avoid that. But would a person of a very gentle, sattvic nature be a mafia boss? No. Such a destiny will not be allotted to a person who is of a different type of nature. So, but whatever prarabdha is allotted to us in accordance with our nature. That is, it's a destiny that is suited to our nature. Sometimes we read stories in the Puranas and other places of people who, I can't remember, off the top of my head, I can't remember, but there are stories in the Puranas and elsewhere about people who were maybe bandits living in the forest and constantly, and wayfarers, they rob the wayfarers and so on. And suddenly something happening, and they suddenly switch around and they become great devotees, great saints. That sometimes happens. But as a general rule, the whatever destiny is allotted to us because of, in accordance with the vasanas that are most prevalent in us. So maybe that a person who in the early part of their life, they live a very sinful life and they later become reformed and become a great saint. Maybe they've got a mixture of good vasanas and bad vasanas. Their prarabdha is such that in the early part of their life, the bad vasanas manifest. But later on, the prarabdha, according to the prarabdha, the course of their life is destined to change, and they change from the bad path to the good path. Then the good vasanas are then given a chance to come to the surface. So these are very, very complex things. We can't fully understand these things with our intellect. Krishna says in the Gita, the secret of karmas is known only to me. So we can just have a general understanding of the basic principles of these. We can't understand all the minute details, and we need not understand the minute details, because in Bhagavan's path, what are we here to investigate? Are we here to investigate karma, action? No, we're here to investigate not doing, but being. Bhagavan's teachings are all about being. So we need not understand in great detail about karma. It's useful to understand the general principles. If we understand, as Bhagavan said, but what is destined to happen that is what is never to happen will not happen in spite of any amount of effort. What is to happen will not stop in spite of any amount of obstruction. We can understand whatever is destined to happen is going to happen. Whatever is not destined to happen is not going to happen. So we need not be concerned about our outward life. So if we understand this basic principle, we will not be concerned about karma or the fruit of karma. We'll be concerned about who is the doer of this? Who is the I who feels I am doing karma? Who is the I who feels I am experiencing the fruit of this karma? As Bhagavan says in verse 38 of Uludunapadu, if one is the doer of action, one will have to experience, if we have a doer of actions, we will have to experience the resulting fruit. When one knows oneself by investigating who is the doer of action, doership will depart and all the three karmas will come to an end. Why is that? If we investigate who is the doer of action, in other words, we're investigating ourselves, ego, who is the doer of action, ego will thereby subside, and we will thereby come to know what we actually are. As soon as we know what we actually are, ego is destroyed. Since the doership and experiencership is only for ego. Ego is the doer of action and the experience of the fruit. So doership and experiencership is the very nature of ego. When ego is destroyed, doership and experiencership are both destroyed. That's why he said doership will come to an end and all three karmas will cease. Because how can the three karmas are agamya, which is the doing, and the sanchita and prarabdha, which is the fruit that we have to experience sooner or later, or potentially to experience, let's say. So without a doer, there can't be any agamya. Without an experiencer, there can't be any fruit to experience, because the fruit requires an experiencer. When the experiencer dies, the experiencer is the doer, namely ego, the sanchita and prarabdha, you may have a huge pile of sanchita, it will all be burnt as soon as ego is destroyed. So we should understand the general principles, but we shouldn't concern ourselves too much in trying to understand karma, because karma is something other than ourselves. We are now connected with karma only because we've risen as ego, identifying ourselves as this body, speech, and mind, but other instruments that do action.
Thank you, Michael. I'll read the question from YouTube. Quote, Namo Ramanaya. It is said that the world is created by self to see its reflection. Is misery also created by self? Unquote.
This is not exactly Bhagavan's teachings. That is, there are many different explanations given about what has created this world. But according to Bhagavan, the world has no existence independent of ego. If ego rises, everything rises. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. So from the perspective of Bhagavan's teachings, the creator of the world is nothing but ego. because this entire waking state, as Bhagavan said, is a dream. Who is the dreamer? The dreamer is ego. So the creator of the dream is the dreamer, namely ego. So it's at this level, this question doesn't arise. If we come down to a lower level of explanation, because not everyone is satisfied that this world exists only because I've risen as ego. So people want other explanation. People who aren't satisfied with the deeper teachings of Bhagavan, then for them, Bhagavan sometimes talked about a God creating the world. And what Bhagavan used to say, for example, if people wanted to reform the world, because we all look at the world, and the world's a pretty, from time immemorial, the world has been an imperfect place. The world is never meant to be perfect. So it's natural for us, when we look at the world, we want to improve the world. But that is folly. What Bhagavan used to say to those people who wanted to reform the world in one way or another was, he who has created this world knows how to take care of it. Leave it to him. You surrender yourself to him. So that is not the deepest teaching of Bhagavan, but for people whose minds are very outward going, seeing only the world and all its problems, that's the appropriate answer to give. Yes, there is some divine power that has created this world, but it is never said that self has created this world. It is said God has created this world. Of course, God is nothing in the... Finally, we'll come to realize that God is nothing but ourself. But when we talk about God as the creator, or as the sustainer, or as the destroyer, all the panchakriyas, the creation, sustenance, dissolution, tirodhana, the veiling, and the anugraha, the grace, the removing of the veil, all these 5 divine functions are said to be, these are the functions of God. These functions we attribute to God. Because we've risen as ego, we have limited ourselves. So we see our own unlimited power as something other than ourselves, and we call that God or Guru. So God seems to be different to ourselves so long as we rise as ego. So long as we're looking outwards, it's appropriate to take God as something separate from ourselves. But we also need to understand that what God actually is what is shining in our heart as eye. So we need to know God, we need to turn within. But what is the power that is regulating everything that's happening in this world? What is giving the fruit of actions? That is the divine power, the power of God or Guru. God and Guru are one and the same. The reason we have 2 words, God and Guru, is they're different functions. Because Guru's function is the anugraha, the removal of the veil of ignorance, whereas God's function is to seemingly create, sustain, and dissolve this world. So the function of Guru is the ultimate divine function. So it is sometimes said Guru is above even God, because if you pray to God, God has to answer all your prayers, or supposed to. Of course, he won't answer all your prayers. He'll answer your prayers in such a way that will be beneficial for you, because many things we pray for are not good for us. So God knows which prayers to answer, but generally the devotee thinks God is there to answer my prayers. Whereas the Guru will not answer. Guru is there only to annihilate the one who is praying, the ego who is praying for this or for that. So the function of Guru is, though Guru and God are one and the same, and they're nothing other than our own self, Atma-swarupa, they are different functions of that one, of that one reality. So if we are not ready to accept that all this is just a dream and created just by ego, then we can say, yes, this world has been created by God. And if God has created this world, he's also created all the misery. And why does God allow misery in this world? Because the world is not, if God created the world, he didn't create the world to be perfect. If he wanted the world to be perfect, he'd have created a perfect world. Why did God create an imperfect world? Because that is the way it's meant to be. Because God's aim is not to God's ultimate aim is not to give us all the transient pleasures that we are constantly seeking. His aim is to give us the eternal happiness that is our own real nature. That eternal happiness cannot be found in this world. So this world is there ultimately to turn our attention back within, where it's supposed to be. So all the misery and everything, yes, God allows misery. When he allots our prarabdha, our prarabdha consists of pleasures and pains, nice things and nasty things. This is the nature of life. But all those, whatever we are given to experience, whatever any of us are given to experience, is all the fruit of our past actions. But it's not a random selection of the fruit of our past actions. God selects those fruit that will be most conducive to our spiritual development. So all the suffering, all the wars and the famines and the disease and old age and natural calamities, the volcanoes and the earthquakes and all the storms and all these things that happen, this is all the fruit of our past actions selected by God for our own ultimate spiritual benefit. So ultimately, what is ruling this world? Isa, God means Isa. Isa, the word Isa or Ishwara means the ruler. He's the one who is ruling this world. So he's the one who is allotting our karmas in such a way that will be most conducive to our spiritual development. So God and Guru, though in our view they seem to be different, ultimately they're one and the same. And when we turn within and see what we actually are, we will find what we actually are is what we were previously seeing outwardly as God and Guru.
Thank you, sir.
I hope that was a clear answer to that question.
Yes, yes. It was a wonderful response. And on YouTube, there are messages of thanks to you from Mr. Sanjay Lohia and Soul Musica as well.
Right.
Michael,
And
sir, I
Sanjay,
shall.
sorry we couldn't answer your question today. If you keep it for next month, that would be good.
No
Yes,
problem.
I shall send you Mr. Sanjay Lohia's question through email.
Right. Okay.
In the next session, we can take it up subsequently.
Right. I prefer it like this, like we had today, with more questions, because this is
Sure.
it's more interactive.
Absolutely. We will start the next session perhaps with Mr. Lohia's question.
Yes.
Thank you, Michael. Would you like to
Okay.
conclude now, sir?
Yes. Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Āṇa-Vichara Ramanaya.